that left Americans sweaty with pride. 'Twas the day the Apollo 11 mission landed on the moon. America was in the midst of a heated Cold War, scorchingly freezing with the Soviet Union, and were in need of a power move to even the score. So what they do, the Yankee Doodle dandies got Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, and Mike Collins up to the moon to collect some dust. But what if I told you that it was all a hoax, that we'd all been living a lie? That one of the greatest achievements in American history was nothing but a Hollywood production. Come on.
By 1969, the United States was under immense political pressure. The Cold War had been raging for 20-some-odd years. By the mid-1950s, Stalin himself had metaphorically hoisted the Iron Curtain, cutting off the democratic world of Western Europe from Eastern Europe. The post-World War II American economy was thriving due to an economic boom. This led to an ideological split between the capitalist US and the communist Soviet Union. These nations came to fear each other's nuclear arsenals, and as a result, did not fight each other directly. Instead, they fought each other in proxy wars, like in Vietnam. Vietnam was a war with no end in sight that left many Americans yearning for peace. Most of America at this point did not long for military victory, rather a moral victory. Hence, the space race. In 1957, the Soviet Union successfully launched Sputnik 1 into low Earth orbit. Yet again, the Soviets kicked America in the behind with Luna 2, the first spacecraft to impact the moon. Then, in 1961, Yuri Gagarin flew into space on the Vostok 1. It was not until 1962 that the US was able to successfully orbit the Earth, led by John Glenn on Mercury Atlas 6. It was clear that the next goal was to land a man on the moon.
Now look into space, to the moon, and to the planets beyond. Our leadership in science and industry, our hopes for peace and security, our obligations to ourselves as well as others, all require us to make this effort, to solve these mysteries, to solve them for the good of all men. There is no strife, no prejudice, no national conflict in outer space as yet. Its hazards are hostile to us all. Its conquest deserves the best of all mankind. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
America's primary goal was not landing a man on the moon, rather achieving the milestone before the Soviets. And this goal was to be achieved in typical American fashion, by any means necessary. Perhaps the easiest way to reach the moon was not to go there at all, rather to fake it. A common theory involves NASA reaching out to legendary Hollywood director Stanley Kubrick, who would direct the moon landing. Kubrick had recently directed the sci-fi classic 2001: A Space Odyssey in 1968, showcasing the director's knowledge and talent for ultra-realistic space footage in a studio.
Dave, do you mind if I ask you a personal question?
No, not at all.
I've wondered whether you might be having some second thoughts about the mission.
How do you mean?
Rumors about something being dug up on the moon. I never gave these stories much credence, but particularly in view of some of the other things that have happened, I find them difficult to put out of my mind.
Shown here is the actual Apollo 11 moon landing. Here you can see one astronaut hitting the ground, and now we have another astronaut holding the flag. Here comes another astronaut into the picture, hopping around, skipping on over to his astronaut pal.
I shot to the top just like I'm a rocket. I ain't have a dollar inside of my pocket. Put that on my gang, I swear I ain't stopping. Strapped up and I'm vest up, I'm an astronaut kid.
Number 1. The case of the flapping flag. A common aspect of the conspiracy theory involves the flag planted by Buzz Aldrin. Conspiracy theorists often point to the fact that the flag appears to be waving. Obviously, the astronauts are in the vacuum of space, meaning that there would be no air to cause the flag to flap. Unless there was a literally impossible gust of wind on the moon, it is possible that the ripples in the flag were caused by a draft in the Hollywood studio. So,
Is this a gaffe on behalf of the Kubrick production team and the scientists at NASA? Or is it Aldrin driving the pole into the firm lunar surface? We'll let you decide.
number 2. The Van Allen belt.
In 1958, the Explorer 3 satellite confirmed the theory of James Van Allen that the Earth was surrounded by high radiation due to highly charged particles from the Sun trapped in the Earth's magnetic field. The discovery of the Van Allen belts proved an immediate problem to NASA, and it was apparent that the 3 astronauts would be sent directly through the belts. NASA realized that Aldrin, Armstrong, and Collins being exposed to high radiation would be unavoidable, and especially dangerous to the extended manned mission. Van Allen and NASA initially believed that it would be impossible to travel through the belts without subjecting the astronauts to lethal amounts of radiation. All attempts to dissipate radiation in the belts were unsuccessful. However, NASA suspiciously put forward their plan to send astronauts through a safe trajectory through the belts, assuming Aldrin, Armstrong, and Collins would only be subjected to the radiation for a short amount of time, and that they were under adequate protection. This contradicts NASA's earlier statements that any amount of radiation would kill the astronauts.
Number 3. The Sea Rock. Logic would suggest that if the US government faked the first moon landing, it would continue to fake the subsequent missions. This means that Apollo 16, launched in 1972, was another Hollywood production, cooked up by Stanley Kubrick. Nowhere is this more clearly seen than in the infamous Sea Rock. Hollywood props were often labeled with certain letters, words, or numbers to indicate where they should be placed on the set. A photograph taken during the Apollo 16 mission shows a rock labeled with the letter C. The letter is clear and cannot be mistaken for a mark on the rock. It is obviously more plausible that this was a mistake by the producers in the studio than for it to be a naturally occurring rock.
There you have it, America. Irrefutable proof that the moon landing was faked. No longer do you live in the shadows. We have exposed the secrets that NASA has kept locked up for the past 50 years. The genius of Stanley Kubrick and NASA created an artistic masterpiece so impeccable that even the sharpest minds of our generation, Stephen Jobs, Bill Gates, Dr. Kevin James, Stephen Hawking, were unable to unmask the fraudulence behind the mission. The motive was clear. The Soviet Union was leading the space race, and America needed to catch up. In addition, America needed to put an end to the eternal conflict between hippies and corporate drones, which had only been heightened due to the Vietnam War. We thank you for watching this video. In reality, you should be thanking us, because it is important to remember that we must always hold the government accountable for feeding us nothing but the truth. Before you go to bed tonight, look at the moon and ask yourself, did we really walk on that path?